everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. Today, I'm joined by Fraser Scott, who is the director of the Gray plays, which we're about to hear all about. Hello, Fraser.
Hello, Alistair. Thank you for having me. Yeah, The Grey Plays is a concert reading of four short plays from Alasdair Gray, which I'm really excited to be doing at the Oran Mor in May.
And how did this project come about?
I picked up a book called The Grey Playbook, which is like a compilation of work that Alistair wrote that sort of like didn't really materialize into anything. So it's full of like short stories, and there's a graphic novel in there, and there's a script for Poor Things, but from like the 90s before the version that we now know as a film. And in that playbook are a whole bunch of short plays that Alistair had written, and I sort of knew Alistair's work from fiction writing. I really loved Poor Things, the novel, and I really loved 1984 Janine. And I never knew that he wrote plays at all. And so it was like a really exciting discovery to be like, oh, this like writer and illustrator that I love has written for theatre. And the plays in the book sort of span a lot of his writing career, really. Like the earliest plays are from the 60s and the latest plays are from like sort of 2006. And what's great in the book is that it has little notes from Alistair about each of the plays and the context. And a lot of the context is like, I wanted to write this play and it didn't really materialize and it didn't really get put on. And I was like, oh, that's really relatable. I know lots of playwrights who have that experience. And I just felt like, oh, wouldn't it be so great to hear these plays out loud, some of which probably haven't really been heard out loud since they were written. It feels like it would be such a great thing to showcase this work that people don't really know about. And so I reached out to the estate and I said, I've just kind of read these plays, I'd really love to do this. And they were really happy to like give permission for us to do it. And yeah, which was great. I was really thrilled that they were keen to have the plays shown as well. So yeah, it sort of came from that, really.
And I think you're right. You know, people know Alistair's work as a writer
Mm.
and as an artist and illustrator, as you say. You're going to be at Oran Mor. I mean, the perfect place. We,
Yeah.
his fantastic work at Oran Mor in Glasgow. But they don't really know his plays at all. And it was interesting at that period. Latterly, Alistair Gray was wanting to collect everything. So he had his book of
Yeah.
short stories, which is a mammoth book of short stories.
Yeah.
He wanted his non-fiction collected, and this, as you say, a Gray playbook is the collection of so many things. He just wanted to have everything so he could have it on his shelf together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is great.
Which is absolutely, and it allows real aficionados to be able to look at everything. But for you, so what's your background? Give us a bit about yourself, Fraser.
Yeah,
Before.
so I'm a theatre director mostly. So I do a little bit of writing, but I'm mostly a theatre director, and I'm from Paisley originally. So I guess like really got into theatre with like John Byrne and like Paisley people. And I spent a little bit of time like doing my own work, and sort of developing new Scottish writing, and it's something I'm really passionate about. But in the last couple of years, I've been really interested in um, finding ways to like revisit old work, especially Scottish work, or sort of revisiting old work and thinking about what does it mean for us in Scotland, and like what is the relevance to us. And so this project is kind of um, the first thing of that manifestation, the first manifestation of me really thinking about that and asking like how do we take work that already exists, that people know or maybe don't know, and then how do we bring it to life today, and how do we make it, how do we serve it to an audience today?
I think what's so exciting for people like me who are big Alistair Gray fans is that this, I'm imagining, unless you're a huge Gray fan, you will not, you won't know these plays, or if you do,
So
of course, it's only going to be on the page. So you'll have real excitement, I think, about putting these
For
on.
sure, and the response has been brilliant. To be honest, like we've had everyone that I've spoken to about it has said the same thing. They've said, "Oh, I didn't know that Alistair wrote plays," and so it feels really great to be like he did, and we're gonna get to do them. So that's really exciting. And also the playbook at the moment is actually out of print as well. So if you don't have it, it's really hard to access the work. So like the response has been brilliant, and online as well. People have been really excited about it, which is just really rewarding, I think, and I hope that it's going to be a night where we can celebrate Alistair as an artist, and also just I suppose like enjoy a bit of this like new work, which is fun. I hope.
So who else is involved? Because you've got some great names involved.
Yeah, so I wanted to have a cast of actors who would have a good time with it. That was kind of my priority. I mean, the plays are like very signature Alistair's like dark comedy, and like they're all very funny, and have a bit of edge to them. So I wanted to get a group of people um who would have be able to have fun with the text, and because it's four plays, four short plays, and so I wanted a cast who could sort of fill all those roles and sort of rotate. So it's a company of five actors, and I was interested to have some like slightly more familiar faces for an audience. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of fun in like seeing people that we kind of know interact with these texts. So that was where I kind of spoke to Jane and James. James Mackenzie and Jane McCarry, who are kind of known faces in Scotland, and both are fans of Alistair's work, and they're both really excited to be a part of it, and also both obviously incredibly fun and
Yeah.
joyous actors. And then I'm also working with Naomi Stirrett and Sam Stopford, who are actors that I've both worked with before, and I've done a fair bit of theatre stuff, and they're both like so brilliant and so warm and so fun. Um, and so those four kind of made up the core of the company. And then I really felt like I wanted someone. I think because um, of the sort of like broken up nature of the show, it's going to be sort of four short plays jumping about in terms of where we are and where we are and stuff. I wanted someone who could guide the audience through that, and I'm very grateful to have Cora Bissett be our host for the night, who's going to be perfect for it, and she, um, as a director and as a theatre person, really understands that, and also a writer and a performer, and is incredibly lovely and charismatic. And we've been talking about how we can implement some of those notes that Alistair wrote in the playbook, so how we can like weave that into our show to like help guide the audience through it. And so it's like a really lovely company, and everyone is really excited to be a part of it, which is great. Um,
No, I can imagine. I think one of the things, if you say explain what it's going to be, I can imagine that the people you ask say, "Yeah, I just want to be part of that."
that's it. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
again, we'll talk about the setting of Oran Mor. I take it is going to be in the main
Yeah,
room.
so it's in the main room, and I think that felt like a really easy decision for me. I sort of was like, oh, where would we do it? And I think it feels a little bit mythic to do it under that ceiling. Like actually, the final play, or the latest play that we're presenting, um, in the collection, in the playbook, Alistair talks about being in the middle of painting the ceiling when he wrote this play. So it feels like it's a little bit magic, actually. I think it feels like an incredibly full circle moment to then get to read that play, 15 years later, under the finished ceiling. So I think it's going to feel really lovely in that space. And it feels like the perfect space for it in the heart of the West End.
Just as we're talking, I've got a memory which has jumped at me. One of the last things he wrote was Fleck, is that right? Which was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
play, and I did see a performance of that. I say a performance; it was readers in seats, but
Mm.
in that space, and and Alistair was involved as well. In fact, he was one of the main roles in it. So that, if anyone does know him as a playwright, it probably will be from that latter piece.
Yeah,
Also performed at the Edinburgh Book Festival. But the pieces you've chosen, how did you choose them? Was it difficult to come up with?
it was difficult. I sort of wanted, because there are maybe like 12 or 14 plays in the book, and so I sort of wanted to get a sense of different parts of Alistair's life. So I wanted to make sure that we had something from early on, something from kind of the middle, and something a bit later on. And I also wanted to make sure that I suppose one felt achievable within like our parameters of the reading. So
Yeah.
we can do huge amounts of like stage craft or like staging. It's going to be script in hand, so it can't be anything too complicated. And also the cast size was slightly limiting. It had to sort of work within this cast of four that I had. So that kind of narrowed it down a little bit. And then I wanted to sort of um, find four plays that sort of talked to each other a little bit, or sort of felt like they shared the same themes, or felt like there was a bit of a line through them. And I hope that I've done that with these four. They're all quite, it's interesting, they're all quite domestic plays, I think. I don't know if this was like um, a decision, like a practical staging decision when they
Yeah.
were written, or if it was just like the thing. But they as opposed to Alistair's prose work, which is so often like really fantastical and really epic and really grand, the plays all feel quite domestic in setting, which I think is actually really exciting because it means that what you get is just characters in dialogue with each other, and I think being able to um, hear Alistair writing pure dialogue is such a joy, and the characters really like the back and forth is so great. Um, and so I hope that the plays sort of follow on from each other. And we get a play really early on in the 60s, and
Mm.
then there's two plays from the kind of 70s, mid 70s, and then the last play is like a 2006 piece. So again, it's nice to, although saying that, I don't think you can really tell from reading them when they're like they all feel very contemporary. I think um, they don't really read as being really dated as texts, which I think is also really interesting. And we will present them in order chronologically.
Sure.
They certainly don't feel dated.
And can you give us just a brief kind of breakdown of each piece? The
Yeah,
first one, as you say, is It's Quiet People, isn't it? That's the name of it.
yeah. So the first play is Quiet People, which is a play about a couple, and they like take in these two lodgers who promise to like not be any what like they'll be really good lodgers, they'll be really quiet. And then of course they have a baby, and then like a teenage son turns up who's a bit of a nightmare. Um, and so the play's about them like this couple negotiating how they want to deal with these lodgers. And it's like very funny. And it was actually Quiet People was written for radio, so it was a play.
Mm.
It's written as a play for voices in the playbook, which is interesting as well. And it was broadcast as a radio play. Um, the second play, I need to now get the order right. The second play is Loss of the Golden Silence, which is a play from the 70s, and it's a two-hander, so it's about a couple, um, a sort of man and his partner, and they sort of discover that it's much easier. They get along much easier if they just don't talk to each other. So it's sort of a play in two scenes, about them figuring out a way to like get along without communicating at all, which is really joyous and fun. The third play is The Man Who Knew About Electricity, which actually is written as a screenplay in the playbook. It's
Right?
it's it's like not written um, explicitly as a stage play, which I also thought was really interesting. And it's probably the most like serious in tone of the pieces. It's the piece that's less explicitly a comedy, and it's about this sort of young student who goes into this flat to help a woman like repair a light bulb, and this woman's like got a baby, and she's sort of with this quite abusive husband, and it's like quite an unpleasant living situation. Um, but I sort of picked it because it felt really pertinent in its conversations about like cost of living crisis and like mental health, and um being a play from the 70s, it felt like it really spoke to like what's going on with people in Glasgow today. And I think it really specifically talks about Glasgow, and the lack of work in Glasgow, and it felt really contemporary. So it is a slightly more serious play in tone or in theme, but I think it'll be a really nice contrast in the pieces. and then the final play in the collection is Goodbye Jimmy, which was presented as part of A Play in a Pie in a Pine when it first premiered, and it's a play, a discussion between God and Jesus has basically come to complain to God that he's not done anything, um, and he's letting the world go bad, and it's like a sort of philosophical discussion about that, and it's brilliant, and it's really again also feels really domestic because he's written this conversation between two, but he's written it like a father and son having an argument, and it's brilliant. And there's such a, I hope it's a really wide range of like characters and stories, but that's sort of the gist of the four of them as a collection.
And what's really interesting to me is that three of them were written way before Lanark. Lanark was published in 81, I think, if my memory's right.
Yeah,
So do you know whether Alasdair was known as a playwright? Because I think most of us think of him being an artist. Then
yeah.
Lanark comes along and people think of him as a writer, and then from then on it kind of mixes between the two. But was he known as a playwright when he was in?
He wasn't really. I mean, he wasn't really known as a playwright. And with my conversations with, I've obviously been in touch with the estate and with Andrew, his son, and my conversations with Andrew have been about, Alistair wrote plays to try and become a playwright, and it kind of didn't. He wasn't successful. Like the plays didn't hit off as much as he wanted them to, and he sort of always felt like the plays didn't get as much look in as he would have liked. He was really proud of the plays, and he really loved them, and you sense that in the book as well. He talks about like I wrote this play and I really liked it, but no one wanted it, so I'm going to put it here so at least it exists. And I think that's like really, it's like really relatable. I think for a lot of theatre artists or just artists in general in Scotland, like early career, mid career, that you really try and get the work on and you put your heart and soul into writing a play or making a show, and you don't get it on, or you get on and it doesn't quite go your way. And um, I think all that work that someone puts into a piece it's really important that is like recognized, um, and so I think that's kind of why I wanted to do it a little bit. I was like, I really related to that thing of, oh, you've tried to make these things and they've not gotten what you wanted out of them. So he wasn't at all known as a playwright, even though he really wanted the plays to be seen and to do better than they ever did.
I think that's really interesting, and the idea of the notes that he has
Mm,
in a lot of his books, but in these collections where he's commenting on his own work and his hopes and for them, it speaks of a man whose work absolutely was his life. Because there you are, he's trying to write this huge novel. He's writing these plays, but they're not taking off as he would like. Meanwhile, he's also doing murals for various
mm.
people, mainly around Glasgow. But he's always kind of determined. I think he couldn't do it. It was like when you speak to people who have to do these things, that
Yeah.
seems like it was with him. And it's great that they're now getting a staging and an airing that people will be able to see. We should say, how can people get tickets? How can they learn more?
Yeah, so tickets are on sale through the Oran Mor website. They are selling very quickly, which I'm really happy about. So
I imagine so.
I would recommend booking if you haven't already. The event is being produced through a little theatre company of mine called Outwith It Theatre, and you can follow them on Instagram for updates, etc. And yeah, that's the best way to keep in the loop with what's going on with the project, and then with like other stuff that we'll be doing through the company.
And you mentioned you knew kind of Alasdair as a writer, an illustrator, and artist. Do his visuals play a part in the productions at all?
Yeah, they will a little bit. There's some illustrations in the playbook that relate to some of the pieces that we're gonna have on display. So we'll project some stuff. For the we wanted to. Um, I suppose it's this thing about taking an old thing and like presenting it in a new way, and sort of being in conversation with the work in a way. And so we, for the sort of key art of the event, the poster, we wanted to have like original art for it.
Hmm.
I thought it'd be really exciting to invite a Glasgow visual artists to almost like respond to the plays and to
Yeah.
respond to Alasdair's aesthetic. And so we've worked with an incredible illustrator called Morvan, who did this has done this beautiful image that feels very Alasdair Gray in spirit and in essence, but sort of has like its own spin to it, which I think really encapsulates what I want the event to be is like the soul of this thing, but with our own little spin on the pieces and on the work. But Alasdair's illustrations will feature in the event itself, especially because some of the drawings in the playbook are so beautiful and so expressive and really relate to the text. So we wanted to find a way to present that alongside the text.
How detailed were his directorial notes, if at all? Because you mentioned John Byrne earlier, and if you take a book of his plays, there's almost the costumes are, this is how it looks, this is
Yeah,
how
yeah,
the
yeah.
hair is, this is what they smoke, this, there's all these things. What was it like with these plays?
Yeah, they are fairly specific. I mean, they are quite there's quite a lot of stage directions, and it's quite clear about this is when this happens, this is when this happens. I think it's um you can sort of tell that he's a writer that then turned his hand to prose really well. Because although the dialogue really exists, like the sequences seem to be written as prose sequences, or you can tell that it's playing out for him in a really cinematic way in his head. And obviously we have to take a little bit of artistic license with how we execute that with like the restrictions on the limitations that we have on the event. So there'll be a little bit of like reading stage directions and a little bit of like approximating that action. But we hope that we can, I guess, like, yeah, take the essence of what the thing is. And so for me, it's like, okay, if we cannot, if in our event we're unable to deliver these really specific stage directions, how can we deliver the feeling or the sense of that thing that he wanted to evoke with that action, or how can we give the audience the best impression of what this moment has to be?
And what do you think he was like as a playwright? Is it something we would recognize knowing perhaps the novels and short stories?
Yeah, I think they're undoubtedly in his voice. I think it's something that I'm really drawn to in all of his work. Actually, is that it feels like he's really present in the work. Sometimes in a really front-footed way, where it feels like Alistair is sort of in conversation with you and the novel, or the short story, which I really love. And I think that's all really there in the plays. It feels like sometimes there's a character that feels a little bit like, oh, you've written yourself as a person in this play to sort of hand the audience to characters, which is so great. Um, uh, but yeah, I think it's part of creating the event, right? Is sort of being like, okay, so we are going to be we as a modern audience are going to be in conversation with these plays, and also in conversation with Alistair, who is so present, and it feels like with the ceiling above us and like with the text from the playbook from his notes, like I do want him to feel like he's involved and is part of the conversation in as much as we can have.
Going back to the play Goodbye Jimmy,
Mm.
2006, do you think he wrote one of those parts for himself? And if so, which part?
Yeah, I think it does sort of feel like he's having a conversation with himself a little bit. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
of course, there was a television program where he did exactly that. He kind of
Mm.
interviewed himself back in the day. I can't remember when that came out, but I think he did enjoy that idea of having a dialogue with the artist and with
Yeah,
Alasdair Gray. And for people just listening, I'm using those terrible inverted
yeah,
commas.
yeah.
But I think he did enjoy that,
I
definitely.
I, th I think that play feels really like that. It feels like he's trying to work something out. He's got these really big existential questions about like why are bad things happening in the world, and like whose fault is it, and like it feels like that play especially he is having that dialogue with himself and trying to find an answer to that, which is lovely to read.
When did you first encounter Alasdair Gray then? Was it through books or was it how?
Yeah, it was through books. I mean, obviously, I encountered him without knowing I encountered him by being in Glasgow and being around, the mural on the Hillhead subway and
Mhm.
the mural in the Oran Mor, and and didn't really know him as an artist, but had known these works. And then a friend of mine recommended Poor Things to me, um, pre the film.
Yeah.
This would have been the 2018, 2019 maybe. Um, and I read Poor Things, and I just completely loved it. I loved um, it's such a phenomenal book, and I think that thing of it being quite meta and being like aware of its form and it feeling like Alistair's in conversation with you and the book at the same time is like all stuff I really love. I love when things like are aware of what they are and can play with that. Um, and so that I was like, I was hooked, you know what I mean, from that point on, and I then went to read the short stories. So I read a couple of the short story collections. Um, I really loved The Fall of Kelvin Walker. I thought that was such a beautiful story. And then I read 1982 Janine, which was like, again, is a book that I really think about a lot. Is such an incredible novel and like such a huge artistic gesture. Um, and so by that point I'd read the playbook, or I'd had the playbook, and I was like, okay, I have to do something with this work 'cause it's so rich and it's so exciting.
Yeah. I think I'm right in saying Jane 1982's was Alistair's favourite of his own books as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and would you consider adapting more Grey plays? As you say, there's more in there.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I sort of when I first spoke to the estate, we'd had a conversation about, do we want to do a full length play? Do we want to like, do something on a bigger scale? And kind of the problem, which is maybe why the plays hardly got on in the first place, is that they're all slightly difficult in scale in terms of either they're really big casts,
Mm,
or they're
mm.
or they're not long enough to justify doing on their own. Especially in like sort of today's theatre climate, it would be hard, I think, um, to make a full production of a play work just because of either the length of them or the scale of the cast. So I think this is why I sort of settled on this like concert reading, because it felt like um the best way to present a selection of the work that could actually happen. Um, but I'm definitely interested in working on more of his writing in an adaptation sense.
And for now, is this performance at Oran Mor a one-off, or would you consider? Yes,
It,
it is.
it is a one-off. It is a one-off. Yeah. So we wanted, yeah, just for lots of reasons, we felt like we wanted to sort of do one night and capture it in a bit of a lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And if it goes incredibly well, then we might look at doing some more, or we might bring it back at some point. But um, I also guess I wasn't sure what the reception would be if people would want to come and see it. So um, yeah, it's one night only, which for me is a little bit exciting because
Yeah.
it feels like it's going to happen and then be done.
I would imagine that by the time this podcast goes out, you may already have sold out. I think there will be a
I
lot of
mean, that would
people.
be
I can't
great.
believe I
Yeah.
missed that. It's something that so many people, because there's such warmth to Alistair and
Mm,
work that I think there'll be calls for repeat performances if that's
mm.
possible. And how did you come to work in theatre yourself? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so I did youth theatre, and I sort of grew up doing like school shows, and like musical theatre really was my big into theatre, like as a like young person, as a teenager. And then when I was like 18, and then I was thinking about leaving school to go to university, I didn't want to be an actor. I sort of had, I guess, like didn't feel passionately enough about acting to go down that path. But I was really interested in film at the time, so I went to the Conservatoire of Scotland and studied filmmaking. And I graduated in COVID, and that was horrible and awful.
Oh dear.
Yeah, not ideal. But while I was at the Conservatoire, uh, obviously it's an interdisciplinary university, and so you're around theatre people all the time. And I found myself sort of walking down the corridor and like looking in rehearsal rooms and being like, oh, I wish. I found myself very quickly missing theatre, and so I started doing a little bit of like my own stuff, like student theatre work, um, and then once things got back after COVID. I spent a bit of COVID sort of writing plays and developing plays and uh, I suppose like learning about theatre as a job and as a director. And as COVID started to ease up, I was able to start putting on some work and putting on some little bits, um, which was great. And then yeah, I've just I guess been trying to make work in various ways ever since. But it's I much prefer it to film, and I still do make film work. But for me,
Right.
I think theatre is um, as a director feels really exciting and allows you to have that conversation with an audience in a much more direct way. And like that's really what I enjoy about making that work.
That's really interesting because I think a lot of people start in theatre and then move on to film. So to do that the other way around,
Yeah,
yes.
I don't think it's the most financially sensible option, but
Ah, good on you for that. Um, and in Outwith It is your company then, is it?
yeah, it is. It's like it's very new. The Grey Plays is our sort of first outing, I suppose. And it's really a vehicle to do this sort of thing, to like produce um I guess like take old work and kind of do it in new ways. And there's a few things that I was like, oh, I really want to do this, and I really want to do this, and it feels like a little bit like a thing that might be hard to do with a theatre. And so I think I just need a way to, I need a vehicle to produce that work, or a way to like run some developments or explore some stuff. And so yeah, I sort of have started this little company to do that, to be the sort of the vehicle to producing some of that work that hopefully will um, be for audiences, and also allow me and artists to like respond to or take old work and present it in new or sort of interesting ways.
And would that be specifically Scottish work, or might it be whatever?
Yeah, not specifically. I think I'm definitely interested in the Scottish canon of plays,
Mhm.
and thinking about plays that maybe have been overlooked or not been on loads, and finding ways to stage them similarly to the Grey Plays, or maybe in sort of full productions. But I'm also really interested, like the sort of next project that we've got in the pipeline is is not a Scottish story, but what we want to do is it's a sort of very classic story. We want to take it and put a really Scottish spin on it, and really ask, what does this really old story mean for us in 2025 Scotland today? Um, so that's kind of like the other part of the company mission, I suppose.
I can imagine that there'll be lots of, as you say, forgotten plays,
Mm.
little worked on plays. You know, the history. There'll be.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's just an outlet for like the real like theater nerd in me, because it's like I like to fill my bookcase with random plays that were staged in Scotland that like no one's ever heard of, and you're like, what is this weird?
So at the moment, though, it's all about the Grey plays. Have you had rehearsals? Have you?
Not yet, no. So we've got a couple of days rehearsal. As you can imagine, the company are very busy with lots of things. So we're only, and because it's a stage reading, we don't need loads of rehearsal time. So we're going to be rehearsing the week just before the event itself. So we've got a few days in Glasgow to rehearse and to get the plays on their feet. And we're working with a musician called Sonia Kilman as
Right.
well, who's gonna create some like unique music and score for the
Oh,
pieces, which I think is also going to be really beautiful. So they'll be in the rehearsal room as well, kind of responding to the text and creating some stuff, just to give the plays a bit of texture and a bit of ambient sound, which I think will be really exciting.
so on the night itself, there'll be live music.
There'll be live music on the night,
Oh,
yeah.
fabulous! That sounds
Um,
amazing.
yeah, which is really nice. I guess I want to give a sense of, um, I mean, I suppose I come from musical theatre, and I really love music as part of stuff, and I want to give a sense of feeling and a sense of tone, to sort of underscore the plays and to help move us between the plays. And so it felt like having a musician on stage to kind of do that work was really important.
Well, Fraser, it sounds fantastic. First thing I'm going to do when we stop talking is to go and make sure I can get a ticket for it.
Great, yeah, great.
So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and
Not
all
at
the
all.
best with the Grey Plays when it happens.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.